Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating cultural clash, and it's all hidden inside the reaction to a single video game. We're going to explore how the intense, completely unexpected backlash to this game actually exposes a massive underlying conflict in modern entertainment. It's a controversy that reveals a whole lot about the changing tides in Hollywood, the deep psychological differences between audiences and cultural critics, and honestly, the giant debate over what stories are actually meant to do for us.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the Pragmata backlash, then move into biology versus society, look at the rise of hopecore, tackle media deconstruction, and finally wrap up with storytelling purpose.
Section 1. The Pragmata backlash. A dad simulator sparks outrage.
To really understand this immense cultural clash, we first need to look at the catalyst. It's a video game called Pragmata. Now, at its core, underneath all the flashy sci-fi combat and those beautiful futuristic environments, the game leans heavily on a very straightforward, incredibly earnest emotional dynamic. It's essentially about a surrogate father figure protecting a small, adorable robot girl named Diana. It's a super wholesome premise, and man, did it resonate with the target audience. In fact, it was a massive commercial success, moving over 1 million copies in just its first 2 days. Now, you'd think a game about keeping a virtual kid safe from sci-fi dangers would be completely uncontroversial. I mean, who gets genuinely mad at a digital dad simulator, right? But it actually triggered this incredibly intense, highly polarized response online. The debates surrounding this release quickly moved completely away from the gameplay mechanics and just zeroed in on the very concepts of fatherhood, male protective instincts, and family values.
For example, one prominent commentator posed a pretty pointed question, basically asking why a lonely gamer who might never be with a woman would even care about children. From this specific perspective, the appreciation for a father-daughter dynamic isn't viewed as a natural human response, but rather with deep suspicion. The idea that someone might aspire to something positive they don't currently have, like a family or a protective role, is treated with total confusion. It reveals a worldview where enjoying a protective narrative is seen as a weird anomaly, rather than just a baseline human empathetic trait.
And the criticism escalated even further, with arguments surfacing that men only feel paternal instincts for their biological children. The claim was that feeling protective over a fictional robot is inherently predatory. This framework categorizes male protective instincts toward non-biological or fictional characters as fundamentally dangerous, rather than viewing them as positive traditional traits. The psychological leap here is pretty significant. It posits that basic human empathy and that innate desire to shield the vulnerable is actually just a mask for something much darker when it's displayed by a male audience.
This sentiment echoed across various gaming platforms and publications. Writers expressed genuine discomfort with the idea of men proving their masculinity through protection, while others viewed the mere presence of a female character in a traditionally male-dominated narrative space with extreme suspicion. A core observation from this side of the debate is a really deep skepticism toward traditional male protective roles. So instead of seeing a father figure keeping a child safe as a universal good, these critiques frame it as potentially deviant, manipulative, or just some outdated power fantasy that absolutely needs to be dismantled.
So the absolutely crucial point we need to ask is, why does a game that essentially functions as a dad simulator provoke such intense cultural outrage? Why does the mere suggestion that men have natural, positive, protective instincts trigger this kind of visceral backlash from certain commentators? Well, to answer that, we have to pull back and look a lot deeper into the sociological and biological theories at play here.
Section 2. Biology versus society. The root of the conflict.
This internet outrage can really be viewed as a symptom of a fundamental clash. On one hand, modern ideology often emphasizes deconstruction, sometimes leaning into anti-natalist views and views traditional male protection and family structures with deep suspicion. Opposing this is evolutionary biology, a framework that emphasizes genetic survival, innate maternal and paternal instincts, and views men in the traditional role of protectors. These are two entirely different, deeply opposed frameworks for understanding and evaluating human behavior.
From an evolutionary standpoint, human biology has essentially programmed us to value reproduction and protection above almost all else. Survival of the fittest fundamentally means living long enough to pass on your genes and ensuring your offspring survive to do the exact same thing. Because of this, the drive toward parenthood and protecting the next generation is often viewed as the absolute strongest, most deeply ingrained instinct in the human body. Think about early human tribes navigating really hostile environments. Those without an overwhelming biological urge to protect their young simply didn't survive. It's an instinct forged over hundreds of thousands of years, written entirely into our DNA, which makes it an incredibly powerful force that cannot simply be conditioned away by a few decades of modern cultural shifts.
Within this evolutionary framework, it's argued that these instincts developed complementarily. Historically, women specialized in nurturing infants, while men were naturally wired to protect the broader family unit and raise older children into adults, teaching them survival and complex morality. Therefore, the theory suggests that when audiences play a game like Pragmata, witnessing a father figure protect a child naturally triggers those innate biological desires. It completely bypasses intellectual critique and directly hits core human instincts. It offers a profound sense of satisfaction simply because it aligns perfectly with how our brains have been wired for millennia to perceive safety and success.
Which brings us to a super interesting crossroads. If human biology naturally drives these positive feelings toward family, heroism, and protection, how has the broader entertainment industry, specifically Hollywood, been responding to these deeply ingrained instincts? Have they been feeding them or fighting them? Section 3. The Rise of Hopecore, a Hollywood Vibe Shift. So the industry is currently tracking the emergence of what's being called hopecore. It's basically content that evokes a feeling of hope, glee, and wholeness. As noted by industry publications, it serves as a direct antidote to the relentless modern cynicism we've seen on screen. After years of gritty, pessimistic storytelling that often leaves viewers completely emotionally drained, audiences are showing extreme fatigue. We're seeing a massive shift in highly successful properties that lean right into earnestness, movies and shows where characters genuinely care for one another and try to do the right thing against all odds. It highlights a massive return to positive storytelling that viewers, who are just exhausted by constant negativity, are desperately craving. When contrasting these two approaches, a fascinating debate emerges regarding longevity. On one hand, you have narratives featuring deeply cynical storylines, sometimes dealing with incredibly heavy, deconstructed takes on relationships, responsibility, and failure. On the other hand, you have media like Pragmata, a hopeful narrative where the act of protecting a child is framed as an absolute triumph. While cynical narratives have absolutely dominated critical circles recently, there's a growing argument in the industry that only stories promoting hope, family, and positive human connection have a truly sustainable future. Why? Because they align with what humans innately want to feel when they engage with art.
Section 4. Media Deconstruction, Alienating Audiences.
Now, let's talk about the opposite of hopecore, Deconstructionism. This is a storytelling approach intensely focused on burning down traditional heroes, constantly subverting audience expectations, and pushing an overarching sense of pessimism. While it gained massive popularity among critics and writers in the 21st century, a growing wave of pushback argues that it has systematically alienated audiences. The critique suggests that by continuously stripping away the very elements that make stories inspiring and replacing them with a worldview that insists traditional ideals are inherently flawed, modern media has lost its connection to the everyday viewer. You know, the viewer who looks to stories for motivation and clarity.
This deconstruction functions through a very specific cultural mechanism. Analysts outline a three-step cycle often observed in modern media. Step 1. Subvert traditional heroism and family values. This basically signals to the audience that these ancient concepts are outdated or toxic. Step 2. Preach that striving for self-improvement or traditional ideals is completely unnecessary. It pushes a narrative that you should just stay as you are and that putting in hard work is a fool's errand. And Step 3, while the audience is encouraged into apathy and a cynical mentality, those at the top, the creators and executives themselves, continue to consolidate their own power, wealth, and status. It's essentially a critique of a media landscape that seemingly discourages the viewer from trying to build a better life, while the people making the media enjoy the rewards of their own ambition.
This leads us to a pretty profound question. If the critique holds true, and this relentless deconstruction genuinely discourages self-improvement and fights against our natural instincts, what is the actual fundamental purpose of a story in the first place? Like, why do we even tell them?
Section 5. Storytelling Purpose, a Survival Advantage. Throughout human history, oral traditions were developed specifically to teach survival, heroism, and the vital importance of family. Picture early human tribes gathered around a fire. They didn't tell stories to subvert each other's expectations in a cynical way. No, they told stories as literal survival manuals. These tales stuck around because they provided a tangible evolutionary advantage. They made people stronger, more cohesive, and more resilient against harsh realities. Then, in the 21st century, the Deconstruction era attempted to subvert these innate instincts. But today, the hopecore shift looks way less like a passing trend and more like a natural, inevitable return to those traditional, uplifting narratives. A society fundamentally needs inspiring stories to survive and flourish.
Ultimately, hopecore isn't some radical new trend or a fleeting Hollywood buzzword. It's literally just storytelling. It's a return to the foundational, eternal human truths that we have been sharing since the absolute dawn of language. The ideas of overcoming struggle, protecting the innocent, putting in the work for delayed gratification, and building families, these aren't just tropes to be subverted. They are the bedrock of human survival, wrapped up in narrative form to inspire the next generation.
As we watch these cultural clashes unfold over video games, reviews, and massive blockbuster movies, we really have to ask ourselves, will modern media learn to embrace our innate desire for heroism, family, and hope, or will it continue to fight a losing battle against the very core of human nature? Honestly, the overwhelming success of deeply human protective narratives might just give us our answer. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the media you consume, and I'll see you next time.